PowHER TV, lifestyle and leadership integrated, building a stronger nation, one woman at a time. Happiness, sometimes real and present, sometimes elusive and perhaps not for me. They say that happiness comes from within and that you can't find it from external sources, that nobody can make you happy. I believe that. But still, there is something outside, something bigger than me, bigger than you, that brings with it a sense of purpose, and with that, a sense of happiness and fulfillment. Sometimes it's a larger than ourselves catalyst, often born from crisis, that teaches us what happiness is. But then what? When the crisis is over, can the fulfillment of being in service to something bigger than myself, bigger than yourself, be a path to sustaining happiness and experiencing happiness as a way of life? This is PowHER TV. I'm Kate Bergen. Today, we celebrate Sonia Furstenau. She made national headlines when fighting to protect the quality of drinking water in Shawnigan Lake, a small rural community on Vancouver Island, experiencing the true value of having purpose in how we stand up, speak up, and show up.
Getting up first thing in the morning, morning after morning.
Move Me, Jody Jackson, golf and performance coach, hitting the ice for competition and fun because movement is medicine. Fuel Me, Sherry Strong, food philosopher, nutritionist, and chef. Simple, subtle shifts to turn your health and life around. And finally, our note to self.
It can change landscapes, and it can create an ocean of change with far-reaching ripple effects.
Steely Springham brings it all home, moving from inspiration into action. PowHER TV, this is what happens when Canadian women making an impact in sport, business, the arts, and community leadership come together. What you see in mainstream media when it comes to activism is usually a group of fired up people chanting songs, waving signs, and being very vocal about what they don't want, working against something instead of protesting for what they do want. Sonia Furstenau is a Shawnigan Lake area director with the Cowichan Valley Regional District here on Vancouver Island. She's a very vocal and active advocate for the Shawnigan Lake watershed. She spoke at Power Talks in Victoria in June of 2016. You can see her talk at powHERhouse.com. If there's one overlying lesson that came out or is coming out of your experience in saving Shawnigan Lake water, it's that of the value of community and even what it means to have a strong community. What does community mean to you?
Yeah, and that's what we've always said has been the silver lining in this effort that we're putting into. And community has deepened, the idea of community has deepened enormously for me, and I think for all of us involved in this. But in this case, I think community means standing up for exactly what you're saying, for what we do want. We want clean water. We want a future for our community where our children can enjoy the incredible natural beauty of Shawnigan Lake. And we want a future that we have a say in.
And it sort of morphed. At the beginning, it was a community, and we'll take it to a concept that can apply to many other issues in many other communities. Acting towards something because you're scared is very different than acting for something because you have vision and purpose for what you do want. What's the difference? How did you see the difference manifest itself?
And it's interesting to look at the history of this. So back in 2012, when the proposal first came to the community that a quarry wanted to turn their quarry into a contaminated landfill and fill it with contaminated soil, the first response was definitely fear. I mean, the signs that went up in the community said, be afraid, be very afraid, and it listed the toxins, like furans and dioxins and heavy metals and truly things we don't want in our water.
And how do you describe the mood of the community when they're acting from that fearful place?
It puts the community into a place of reacting. And I think what we've done as the community in Shawnigan is we've moved into a place of empowerment. And we have decided, you know, how this is going to play out. We have decided on the messaging. We have decided on that this is our community, and we are very empowered. And we will never give up.
How does that affect how you interact with each other and how you sort of show up where you live in your community every day?
I always say, come to Shawnigan and you will see more hugging than you can imagine. And so you walk in the cafe and everybody hugs everybody. The men hug, the women hug, we all hug.
Mm-hmm. How many live in Shawnigan? For people who aren't familiar, it's a very small community on Vancouver Island.
So the total population of Shawnigan is about 8,000 people. And it's a very rural area, so it's spread out around the lake. And there's a little heart, a little village with a coffee shop, and that coffee shop, we call it City Hall. Mm-hmm. And we openly talk about the deep love that we feel for each other. And so when one example, when we flew to Vancouver, a number of us for the appeal, one of the appeal hearings over in Vancouver in May, a little seaplane full of people from Shawnigan, mm-hmm. and you could feel the love in that plane that everybody has for each other.
I think that love comes from working towards something that is greater than oneself. Nobody on that plane was there for themselves. They might have started because I'm scared that I'm not going to be able to have clean drinking water, but it morphed into something much bigger and almost unexpected.
Absolutely, and this is the amazing thing that's happened is we've discovered the joy that can come out of such a horrible and tragic situation that we're facing, and the joy of being in service to something bigger than ourselves, and that has brought out the best in people.
One of the things you mentioned in preparing for today was creativity, and it's not something that I would directly connect. Creativity in fighting to save and protect something. How was the community creative, and how is a community creative? Over
a year ago, I contacted a local songwriter who actually lives in Shawnigan and asked her if she would consider writing a song about our efforts. And she wrote this incredibly beautiful song called Where Does It Go? And then another woman, so that was Genevieve Charbonneau, and then Catherine, she took that song and put it to a video. And the video is extraordinary. I mean, it shows these images of mostly women getting up first thing in the morning, morning after morning, and standing up on these cold, wintry roads and just saying no. Like, this is our water, and we're saying no. There's been other songs. Raffi rewrote This Little Light of Mine to Beautiful Shawnigan Lake. And recently, a woman named Suzanne Tedrick wrote another song. And that was put to video by a local Jim Sprague. This incredible, there's art, poetry, essays that have been written. This incredible outburst of creativity has come out of this, as well as this connectivity in the community.
When we join Sonia Furstenau on set here in just a moment, once again, we're going to look at the power that women bring to the table in building community.
Hi there, this is Jody Jackson, and we are in an amazing building right now. Shawnigan Lake School has introduced a women's hockey program, and we are here to share a little bit of information for you. To my right is a good buddy, Wendy Bowen, and she's a physiotherapist and motivational speaker. To my left is Tracy Carson, another very good buddy, and we are part of a women's hockey team, and we want to share a story. And what's your story? How did you come to hockey?
Well, I've been involved in hockey for over 40 years. As a player, as a coach, I've coached at the midget rep level, female.
I grew up in Ontario, so we have outdoor rinks.
Yeah.
So I started skating at about age 2 on those double blades, and got the boys taught me how to play hockey. And by age 8, I said to my dad, I would like to play hockey like the boys, and got together with a group of other parents and organized our girls team to play in the boys novice division.
Thank you for taking the hits, literally. Let's do this. I love hockey. You didn't fall for it, did you? All right, we just finished some fun hockey. You played amazing.
Thank you.
On some great ice.
Beautiful ice.
Yes, and the ice belongs to the Shawnigan Lake School. The first year for the women's program, 2016-2017 debut.
They are going to be playing in the midget varsity league. Starting out, they have to start at the varsity level because they're just new to the league.
And they've just hired a head coach, and her name is Carly Haggard. She's played on Team Canada, I believe. She's coming in to coach. She coached out in Ontario, I believe, at Guelph. Personally, I'd love to get some instruction from her, and I'd love to grow the women's ice hockey in this wonderful valley of ours. So on this side, we have the Cowichan Valley, more recreational, intermediate, and a traveling competitive team. What's that all about?
Well, I left the She Devils because of an injury about 5 years ago. Went down to a more intermediate team, and that grew, kept growing,
Yes, sir.
to where we could actually divide to intermediate vet. And I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, decided to start a house league type of hockey, intramurals, so beginner players could come out and play. So we get about 10 ice slots per year.
Okay, so that's right here in the Cowichan Valley. There's a lot of recreational beginnings for women that want to come out and play some hockey. I think I'm going to go back to hockey. I took a year off, and I'm really stoked after being out on the ice at Shawnigan Lake School. Thank you again. Good luck, ladies. We're rooting for you.
Yes.
And this is Move Me with Jody Jackson. Movement is definitely medicine for me, whether it's on the frozen ice, maybe on a paddleboard in the ocean. Let's just keep moving.
Gotta move it, move it.
We gotta move it, move it.
Sonia Furstenau is the Cowichan Director for the Cowichan Valley Regional District and knows firsthand how community can change, become stronger, more enjoyable, filled with love when you move from fear into a place of empowerment. Yeah. Women have a big role to play in that. What role do women have? What innate skill do you think we bring to the table?
I think bringing people together is one thing that women naturally want to do, but also infusing all of our efforts with compassion and generosity and kindness. There's a genuine kind of softness.
So because we're more nurturing in the role that many of us play, not all, in the role of mother?
Yeah, I think so. And again, you know, to protect our water now, it's not for us today. We're talking about making sure there isn't a long-term cumulative impact. When you put 50 million tons of contaminated soil and leave it forever, eventually there will be a cumulative impact. And so we're talking about protecting future generations, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and that protective role tends to fall to women in a lot of ways. And the other thing that the women in Shawnigan, you know, we're talking about creating resilience, and you know, a week before we got the Environmental Appeal Board decision that upheld this permit, we'd had the 3rd annual Shawnigan Gathering. And the gathering was a weekend of coming together, live music, singing, dancing, celebrating, having themes. So the first year it was water, and the second year it was economy, and the third year it was cooperative community. And, you know, bringing in speakers to talk about building cooperative communities, and then having a kind of trade show that went all weekend so we could learn about the businesses that are operating in Shawnigan. And that had been organized by, I called them the Ladies of the Lake. So every Monday morning, getting together at the local fish and chip shop, drinking coffee, eating toast, and planning this 2-day event. And we, you know, were willing to put our time and efforts into that because it was good for the community.
And then you got a phone call in the middle of the celebrating.
Yeah, we were debriefing 5 days later on a Friday afternoon. So the gathering had been the weekend before. I got a phone call from Calvin Cook, the president of the Shawnigan Residents Association, saying the EAB, the Environmental Appeal Board, had decided to hold up the permit.
So you're devastated.
Absolutely.
At this point, and you turned around to a room full of women.
Yes.
And told them.
I didn't need to tell them.
They could see it on your face.
They said, you know, I had completely changed color, and they knew exactly what I had just heard.
How did they support you in that role? In that time?
You know, it was deeply emotional, and so we started to cry, and we held each other, and then basically, and I said to them at that moment, we will win this because we will all do this for free. We will all give everything we can of ourselves for no payment, just because it's the right thing to do and because we want to protect our water and our future. You cannot defeat that kind of spirit. And
I think that's a good example of how the environment that you're going to be working in, it's always going to change. This world is ever changing, and we have to adapt, which is what you're doing in Shawnigan Lake. Mm-hmm. Is it easy to sway off course? You're adapting as you go, and it can be overwhelming, and you steer the wrong way.
It can be overwhelming. A couple of things that have been solid from the beginning. One, we always speak the truth. Mm-hmm. So we only say things that we know to be true and that we can back up with evidence. Two, we always remember what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that makes it easy to stay on course. Our intention is to protect our water and to protect our future. Three, we infuse our efforts with love and generosity and kindness and compassion.
If you had turned around to a room full of not quite so supportive people in that moment, and there had been anger, how dare they, and what this and what that, instead of that emotional release, your memory of that experience would be very different, and therefore you'd probably be having a different experience today. Yeah. And that's some of what the women can do and how they hold you.
And there has been anger, of course. We are angry at what has happened, but anger can't sustain these kinds of efforts. Mm-hmm. You don't come back and spend time with angry people. Mm-hmm. And so that's been, again, the silver lining is cultivating a kind of community that's rooted in all of these wonderful values that hold you together and keep you coming back to the table and coming back for those meetings.
When we come back with Sonia Furstenau, how waiting for a crisis isn't the best time to build resilience.
There's great power and simplicity in simple and subtle shifts. It doesn't have to be an incredibly dramatic situation to turn your health and your life around. And in fact, what I find is that the less you do, but more consistently over a long period of time, the more sustainable the change is. For many years, I dealt with clients who had dramatic changes that they need to make in their life. And in fact, some would actually fly me across the world to do lifestyle makeovers. And this was usually in the situation where they had a seriously chronic disease or a life-threatening disease, or just a condition that they knew they needed to make dramatic changes in their life. So I would go in and totally change their kitchen around and give them instruction, and in 2 weeks, things would dramatically shift. But what I found with those clients is when the chronic pain was over and the disease was no longer life-threatening, they often would resume their old behaviors because those triggers that propelled them into that had gone away. What I find long-term is most sustainable for people is to make simple and subtle shifts over a long period of time. It's kind of like if an ocean liner is going full steam ahead, if it has to turn around, it can't just turn around right away. It has to slow down and then make that shift. And so sometimes when we are wanting to make changes, we just kind of feel it's drastic and we need to throw everything out and start again from scratch. And if your personality suits that, that's great. Do that by all means. But what you'll find is that for most of us, it requires just replacing one thing with another thing. When we go grocery shopping, maybe it's 2 things we replace with organic or natural versions of it. And then we move more dramatically as those things become comfortable for us. And sometimes it may not go fast enough, but remember, just like that ocean liner is going along a long distance, it kind of doesn't seem like it's making tracks or the scenery hasn't changed because all you see is the ocean. But when you get to the destination, you know you've traveled a long way. And just keep keeping on. You'll notice a dramatic difference in how you look, in how you feel, and how easy this transition can be when you do it sustainably. For more tips, tools, strategies, and recipes to help you develop a healthier relationship with food in a powerful way, go to returntofood.com.
Building community, building resilience in community outside and before a crisis. The key to that is, Sonia Furstenau, how do you build community without it starting from a place of fear?
Yeah, I mean, I think finding reasons to come together that are greater than yourself. Mm-hmm. So finding purpose. And we found purpose in Shawnigan. And it's going to be really important to me, and I know to all of us, after we win this fight, that we don't lose that sense of purpose, and that we keep coming together and we keep building on what we've gotten.
The staying together becomes the purpose.
Yeah, actually, that is very true. And holding ourselves together and that compassion and keeping that, maintaining that, you know, and also finding reasons to celebrate. It's awesome when we come together to celebrate. I mean, we really know how to have fun and enjoy each other's company and celebrate the smallest things now, because we've come to understand the fragility of our own reality.
Mm-hmm. And how an individual and a community can be empowered by working together, because no person can do it by themselves. Yeah. The phrase of think globally, act locally, yeah, has changed for you.
It has. I mean, I've thought, you know, I've been an advocate and an activist much of my life on, you know, many different issues, some of them local, some of them global. Mm-hmm. But I always thought I couldn't really wrap my head around that idea of how can you change the world by acting locally. I've completely changed in my thinking on that. I think that what is happening in Shawnigan is revolutionary. And it's revolutionary in that it's creating the kind of world that we want to see right there in our own community.
I can feel that you feel it.
I do.
As you're saying these words now.
Yeah.
We've touched on a little bit about what it means to show up. I think we've talked a little bit, touched on what it means to speak up. What does it mean to stand up?
Yeah, and that phrase came from Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, and he said that that's the imperative right now in BC, is that we show up, we speak up, and we stand up. And then he said, look to Shawnigan Lake to see that that's happening. And that was, I was very touched by that on behalf of the community, that was being recognized. Yes, we learned how to show up, and we learned how to speak up, for sure. The standing up really came to be standing together, and to do that, we actually created teams, and we have a structure in the community where people can contribute in the areas that they feel they are best able to contribute.
So, and this was a conscious structure.
This was after we were in full crisis. November, December, trucks were rolling in from PCT, from Pacific Coast Terminals in Port Moody.
Still in the place of fear.
Very much in a place of fear. We were very fearful of what was coming into our watershed. There was a lot of blockading happening, a lot of protesting. And then we came together as a community. About 500 people came to a community meeting on December 8th. And we passed around a clipboard and said, do you want to be more directly involved in the efforts? A week later, everybody who said yes was invited to another meeting, and about 120 people came out. And by the end of that night, we had 14 teams.
Did you know what those teams were going to be?
We worked it out a little bit. A small group of us worked it out ahead of time, what we thought. So there's a visual communication team, a printed communication team, a media team, a research team, a social media team, a fundraising team. And so then...
Can you imagine how much it would cost to build this team if people were expecting and being motivated by the dollar value pay that they were getting at the end of it?
Couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
No, and nobody gets paid anything. In fact, we give and give and give of ourselves.
A research team?
We have a research team, and the research team is quite active right now as we prepare for the next stage of legal battles and legal issues. The fundraising team has been extraordinary. There was a fundraising event about a month ago. In one night, raised over $40,000.
This is what happens when collectively and collaboratively people work towards a vision and a purpose.
Yeah.
When you don't have to fight to save your water anymore, what are you going to do? How do you keep that community together?
We have to keep coming together. That's important. And you think about traditionally small communities and villages through history that we have these celebratory times, right? We have, you come together for holidays now, but in the past it was more around seasonal events, Thanksgiving or solstice or that kind of thing. I think we need to ensure as a community that we build in those celebratory events, but also that we maintain a sense of purpose above ourselves. And I think in Shawnigan what that is we've all come to deeply recognize the importance of water for all communities. And we're willing to reach out to other communities and help in any way we can with water. And I think that purpose will hold us together.
And I think a lot of what you're doing can be applied to other important issues in different communities, whatever those issues
Absolutely,
might be.
and it is applicable in any community. The other thing in Shawnigan is we've got a lot of work to do. We are an extraordinary recreational destination, and we want to build on that. We want to become the place in Western Canada where you can go mountain biking, swimming, hiking, and then stop at a winery at the end of the day.
Sounds good. I'll be visiting. You've got room, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. We're going to end our time with you now today, Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you so
Before we go, we have a Power Bite, and I'm going to ask you to select and choose and then read out loud for us, and this is how we will end our time together.
There we go.
And
There's the turtle.
see what comes. It's amazing how connected they become and how relevant and applicable to our conversation, and it's not pre-planned.
Powerful women stand on their story, not in it.
Very true.
Very true.
Water, a single drop, in its simplest form, appears unassuming, fragile, and powerless. Much like people. You may be one single drop of water in a sea of humanity. But, much like a stream, when single drops join together, collectively combining enough energy, working together as one, power is created. Increasing our strength and momentum to flood the world with powerful change. The very simple element of combining enough drops of water, fueled by the ideal life force, can move mountains, it can change landscapes, and it can create an ocean of change with far-reaching ripple effects in this sea of humanity on Earth. 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered by water. Water makes up 2/3 of our human body. The brain and lungs alone are 90% water. Water circulates through land just as it does through our bodies, hydrating, cleansing, transporting nutrients, replenishing, and flushing waste. It is abundantly clear that water, this prime element, is vital for life on Earth. Water might be everywhere, a seemingly endless resource, but we must never, ever take it for granted. Not one single drop. Note to self: every drop counts.